Daf Kuf Beis. Yesterday we digressed into a Shemitah, whether it applies to wood and so on. And Rashi, we learned the Gemara according to Rashi over here, but interesting. Rashi over here says that this is the way I heard the Pshat in the Gemara, and this is the correct way of learning. Rashi in Sukkah, the same Sukkah, Rashi completely demolishes this Pshat and gives a different Pshat in the whole Gemara, which is quite interesting. Because here he says, Du Shemaiti v'Hagan. Oh, now that's the question. So we're going to learn today's Gemara. We'll talk about that. Which Gemara was first? Bava Kama or Sukkah? We're not going to figure it out, but it tells you that we're not necessarily in a specific order. So we are up to the Gemara, Daf Kuf Beis Amud Aleph, and we are up to the two dots. So in our Mishnah, we had an argument between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda, where Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Meir says that if he altered the instructions, I told him red, he made black. It's a shinui. He's like a ganef. We treat him like a ganef. He gets to keep the wool, and he has to reimburse the owner of the wool, whatever the price was at the time. And Rabbi Yehuda says, Rabbi Yehuda says no. It's not really treated as a shinui, and therefore the ganef gets to keep it. But since he improved it, even though not to your satisfaction, so you have to pay him the lesser amount, whichever is less, the improvement or the expense. So now the Gemara has over here, Yosef Rabbi Yosef Achei Rabbi Abba. Rabbi Yosef sat behind Rabbi Abba. We have this kind of Gemara in a few places. Rabbi Yosef sat behind Rabbi Abba. If you remember, Rabbi Yosef said about himself in Gemara Arif Sachim that the three people who have a very difficult time in life, and one of them is a guy who's a captain, always angry, a guy who is very fastidious, a mafunik, can't he tests a piece of paper on the floor, and so on and so forth. And Rabbi Yosef said, "The couldn't be." As you'll see right in the Gemara, I got all those problems. So here we see it. Rabbi Yosef. So I'm not sure how he dealt with Abaye, because Abaye really drove him off the wall, and you don't see him ever get angry. But here he sat here, so he must have tempered himself when he became a Yeshiva or whatever. He sort of calmed down, or maybe because Abaye and him had this very special relationship. But Yosef Rabbi Yosef sat behind Abba in front of Rabbi Huna. The Yosef Rabbi Huna was sitting there, and this is what he said. Halacha can Rabbi Shur ben Karcha. We'll soon see which Rabbi Shur ben Karcha that is. And the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda, which is our Mishnah. Hadrinu Rabbi Yosef la'apeh. Rabbi Yosef turned around in anger. What's he angry about? He didn't, let's say, agree with Rabbi Huna. What he gets angry for? But that's him. Omar, Rabbi Shur ben Karcha. I understand why you have to say the halacha Rabbi Shur ben Karcha, because it's a salkin. I would have thought Yochid v'Rabim halacha k'Rabim. Generally, we don't pass him like a lone opinion. Kamashalon, he needs to tell us halacha k'Yochid. We'll soon see which Rabbi Shur ben Karcha it is, as Gemara says right now. Shur ben Karcha Mahi, before we move on. The Tanya, we learned, Shur ben Karcha Eimer, Malva Bishtar. We're talking about the period of 3 days around the Goyish Yom Chagas. You're not allowed to take from them a payment, because then they will go and into their churches and they're gonna express gratitude to their idols. They're able to discharge their payments. And also, you shouldn't pay them, because they'll say, "Well, I got my money." So Rabbi Shur ben Karcha says, "Milva bishtar." If the loan is bishtar, then ain't Ephraim. Why pay now? If you can go wait a week, and if you don't want to pay, take to court. You have documents. But milva apeh, you have no real evidence that he owes him money. If he's prepared to pay you, Ephraim. If he's prepared, take it. Because you're taking your money back. Who said next week you'll get your money back? Now he's in a good mood for whatever it is. Take it. So we're going to allow you to take it. And the Rabbanan say, no difference if it's milva b'shtar, milva peh. You cannot collect the money, nor can you pay them, because otherwise they'll express their gratitude to their idols. So he's saying the halacha is like a shur ben karcha, and milva peh you can collect. El halacha can Rabbi Yehuda lamali. Why do you have to tell me halacha Rabbi Yehuda? First of all, we have a general rule which Mepharshim already asked, that never Rabbi Yehuda may have a machlekes halacha go Rabbi Yehuda. So why do you have to pass it? But apart from that, machlekes v'achar stam. We have a general rule: when you have an argument in the Mishnah, then later on the Mishnah is anonymously paskas like one of them. You paskas like the stam. Machlekes v'achar stam. Machlekes v'achar stam. Machlekes v'achar stam. Halacha yistam. Machlekes Bava Kama. Here we have the machlekes. The tzvoy adam, tzvoy shachar, tzvoy adam. You change the colors. The mayor says, you give him the money for the wool because it was a shinui. And Rabbi Yehuda says, because he know that the ganav gets to keep the dyer gets to keep the wool, but and the dyer does not get to keep the wool because there's no shina here. He has to give it back, but the owner of the material has to pay something towards it. And Iba Shevach, yes, you see, you pay the expense. You see Shevach, and the expense is greater than the profit. Where's the stam? In Bab Mitzvah. That what? That if you change, what happens if you change it? Now we learn. Call Hamishana Yolatayna. If you change, we say Yolatayna. That what? That you get the lesser. If you change your mind in the middle of a deal, you always get the lesser amount. Same thing over here. So we see from that what? That you get something for the lesser amount, expense or the profit, whatever it is, the lesser amount. So why does Abu Huna have to say this? So why get angry? Anyway, but Abu Huna eats the Huna needed. You know why? So I'll look at them. I would have thought. Now here we have a double negative. Ein Seder Mishnah Vestam Ba'achim Achlekesi. Is that what? Sorry, before we get to the double negative. Ein Seder Mishnah. There is no such thing as an order in Mishnah Vestam Ba'achim Achlekesi. How do you know which is the order? How do you know that Mishnah Bava Kama comes before the Mishnah Bava Mitzvah? Maybe Mishnah Bava Mitzvah is first. How do you know which Stam and Achim Achlekesi? Rabbi Yosef. If so, Kol Machlekes Stam name ain't the Mishnah. The whole rule can't apply. Punkt over here, you say you don't know which is first. So how can you have the rule that there's a machlekes v'achar stam? Maybe it's the other way around. But Abhuna was again. Now this is double negative. Ki lo yamin. When don't we say ein say the Mishnah b'chad masechta? In one masechta, you don't say there's no seder. What do you say? There is a seder. We say one masechta. Rebbe made it sure that he put the earlier Mishnahs and later Mishnahs. So there's a stam earlier on. And machlekes later on, the halacha like if there's a stam first, machlekes later means he doesn't know. But if the machlekes first and the stam later, then the halacha like a stam. But in two different mesechtas, there's no raya that Bava Kama was learned before Bava Mitzvah. Maybe he learned Bava Mitzvah before Bava Kama. When he put it down in Shas, so he put it together, and the ending of one mesechta sort of segues into the others that we had a few times, Nazir and Seita, and Nadorim and Ksubis. Exactly. It should be like Hakaisi go or Misharaya Seita Kukula. Yazas from the Yain. So the beginning and Masechta, but learning, how do you know which one you learn first? So for one Masechta you can't make an order. No, that's what he's getting angry about. But Rabbi Yosef Kula Nezikah Chad Masechta. Because he holds that Bava Kama means the first portal and Bava Mitzvah means the second portal and Bava after the last portal, he holds it's all one Masechta. If it's one Masechta, then Machlekes V'achar Stam. But Rabuna holds it's three Masechtas. And for that he got angry. You could explain why I got angry. It'd be very nice to hear. Anyway, but I told you once before, I think, Gon, Gimel Aleph Vav Nun is the title we use for somebody who knows a Baki B'Shas, it used to be, and that's 60 Masechtas. But there's an argument with the 60, 61, 63. If you learn that Bava Kama, Bava Mitzvah, Bava Asa is all one Masechta, it's 61. If you learn Sanhedrin, Avodah Zarah is one Masechta, it becomes 60. There's a Machlekes in the Rishonim. The Tosfos Yom Tov in the beginning of Bava Kama says this in his introduction. According to some of the Shainim, the entire Nezikin is Chadam Masechti. Not only the Babas, because it says right here the Lashon. Kula Nezikin Chadam Masechti. So they hold the Bava Kama, Bava Tzibah, Bava Basa, Sanhedrin, Avodah Zarah, and Makkas. It's all one long Masechta, which is interesting. Why they learn that way? That's the Rambam learns that way. The Ritva and others learn that way as well. Anyway. So that's the machlekes, whether it's one masechta or three masechtas, or iba yisema, or we can say definitely it's three different masechtas. Everyone agrees three different masechtas. So if it's three different masechtas, then what's going on about machlekes v'achas tam? Rabbi says, because he says he's saying it generally speaking. Two different masechtas, you can't learn through. But Rabbi Yosef was angry because that particular Mishnah threw in Kol HaMishana Yodel HaTachtoina V'chol HaChayz V'Yodel, which is gratuitous because it's not really part of the sugya in that Mishnah. But because the Mishnah is collecting halachas, it seems like this Mishnah is making up a ruling. So it's not just an ordinary stam. There's no author, and therefore we'll say that probably Rebbe said that's halacha. Here there was a ruling, and because there was a ruling and it doesn't even belong there, that's considered a machlekes here. And a stam over there. That's Rabbi Yosef's svara. And Abu agrees. And yeah, Birthing Mother. Talking about we learned. Okay, yeah, but here we have an interesting concept. If a shliach deviates from the instructions, is he still a shliach or not anymore? Because you're not really carrying out my instructions. Tell him what we learned. You gave money to your shliach, to buy wheat and for business. Now Rashi says here, which means initially we already agreed that you'll have a chelik in it. We're partners. I'm doing I'm an investor. I'm giving you the money. You do the work. You do the right strategies, and we'll split the profits. This is the whole idea of heteriska, and the whole idea of heteriska has to be you have to also take part of the losses as well. Otherwise, it looks like a straight out ribis loan. You know, you're lending money for the business, and then you're taking 50% profit. That's a lot more than what that's ribis. So, but if you take part of the loss, okay. So then it's part of the hefsed, part of the schad. You're taking the loss as well. So it's not considered a loan with ribis. It's an investment. So I gave him money. What happened was the lokach mem soidin, and you went ahead and he bought barley. He didn't carry out. He didn't do my instructions, but it was still a business deal. It was a good. He saw a good opportunity. He went ahead and he bought barley instead. He decided to market barley. Barley is going to go up, and wheat is the price is stable and not going anywhere. Or so I like to make it whatever the opposite. It's tiny. One price it says in if there was a loss, he carries a loss. The shliach, no, the shliach carries a loss. We'll soon explain. But but if there was a profit, then I see the lie. Then they split 50-50. That's one price. But Tanya, the other price says im pachsalai. Sorry, I'm right. Im pachsalai. That if there was a loss, it goes to the shliach. And you take the whole profit. In other words, it's no longer the original owners. Everything now moved, transferred to the shliach because he didn't carry out the instructions, so therefore he's no longer the shliach. It's his thing. He just has to reimburse the guy for the money. But the Tanichad and the other brides who learned he takes a loss, but he might see it if it went up. I see the lamp. So the original deal goes back. He's still the shliach. What's going on here? I'm gonna make a kasha. The first Mishnah, the first Bryce is Meir who says that there was a shini here, and it was a shini like a ganev. It became now the ganev, it became now the shliach, and therefore he might everything blows the shliach, and he just has to reimburse him for the money that he gave him. And the second Bryce is Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda holds that shini it's not really considered a shini, and therefore Rabbi Yehuda says that it's still the original person. So if there's a profit, the deal still remains. Nobody, you're still a shliach. You're still a shliach. But if there's a loss, you lose the whole thing. Why? Because you have a famous expression. Yeah, I said to fix things up, and you didn't carry my instructions. If you carry my instructions, then there's a loss. Is another thing altogether. But you didn't carry my instructions.
I'm surprised he calls it a shili because
remember Rabbi Yehuda Mishnah said
verbal instruction. It's not a
that's called a yeah, but you're no longer a shliach then. If you're Mashana Maya, you're talking about a ganef. This is not a ganef. We're not talking about a ganef. It's a shliach. By a shliach, what's the definition? Even though we're using the same shini, obviously it's something else. Here shini means, are you still the shliach when you don't carry out my instructions? So right now we think, according to Rameir, no, because you made a shini. According to Rabbi Yehuda, you're still the shliach. Says he more further, Rabbi Lazar asked a question which I still don't understand. The more times we had, I think I mentioned this before. Rabbi Yechon, after his Lakish passed away, he looked for a chavrusa. They gave him Rabbi Lazar. Whatever Yechon said, Lazar agreed with him. He said, "What I need it for?" He davened that he should pass away. All over Shachs, Rabbi Lazar argues with him. All he had to tell Rabbi Lazar is, "Stop agreeing with me, argue with me." That's all he had to say instead of giving up. You see, like Moshe right here, we have it all the time. Maskele Rabbi Lazar, Memai, who told you that Rabbi Meir would argue in this case? You know when Rabbi Meir argues, he said, make me red and you make black. It's something that I'm going to wear. I'm very particular what I wear. I don't like that color. I like this color. So therefore, you made a shini and you no longer represent me. Okay, but over here, my main purpose is getting barley or wheat. I want to make money. The main purpose of the geschäft is to make a profit. So therefore, if you changed my instructions because you knew the market, that's why we became partners. I'm the money guy, and you're the business acumen. So therefore, if you decided that barley is better, Who said that he's particular? Who said he's upset? How do you know I'm able to argue in this case? So he asked him, Dilma, if he needs for himself, you're particular. If the whole thing is a business transaction, maybe maybe even a mayor agrees that you're still the shliach. So how do you know this? The first brisa that said that everything belongs now to the shliach is a mayor. All brises are mayor, but the first brisa talking about I said buy me wheat to eat. I want to eat bread made out of wheat. I don't want to eat bread made out of barley. It's Michael Behema. So and you change. You're no longer my shliach. And then so on. That's the first brisa. The second brisa that says that no, that the shliach is still a shliach is l'schayda. I told you to do business. So then I don't really care. At the end of the day, you think I really care if it's wheat, and I just want to make money. And if you think it should be barley, fine. But if there's a loss, then you didn't carry my instructions. So the kuni shudat l'lafti. So the Rif says from here we learn out the concept a little bit, the concept of heteriska. You know that we're going into a business geschäft, and it's not considered ribis here. It's not considered ribis here because if you would have carried out my instructions and it's a loss, then I carry the loss. I over here I don't carry the loss at all. That's because you didn't carry out my instructions. So I went in for a business deal. However, there are some Rishonim that learn that no, we're not talking about. I never hired you as a partner. Never. I just asked you. I gave you a shliach. Do me a favor. So why in the second brisa you get half? Because you changed my instructions. So it's your input. If you would have carried out my instruction, there was a profit, totally mine. It's my money. I asked you to do something for me. Now it went up in value, all my benefit. But because you did not listen to me, and you decided instead of buying wheat, you bought barley, and then it went up in value. It's your input. You're entitled to something. Right. That's some of the shayim. The Rif seems wouldn't agree with that. Okay, back to the Gemara. Now we're going to have a whole discussion about it. Shmuel Bas Sesarti Ihochi. So sorry, I missed the line. Important. Machla Marava. In that so they laughed in Rabbi Yochanan. They laughed in Rabbi Yochanan. We have this expression sometimes. They mocked him. Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Yehuda. So what he's saying according to Rabbi Yehuda, he's still the shliach. He's still the shliach, right? And the guy told him buy me wheat. He went and bought barley, and you say, oh, it's not really a shini. It's still the original person, the balamais, owns balamais. L'chayde, when you have to make a kinyan, you have to have kavanah. The person who buys has to have kavanah to be kinyan. The person who's makna has to have kavanah to be makna, but not just to be makna, but to be makna to the right person. So if he sees the shliach standing there and the guy asks for barley, who does he have in mind that should be kinyan of the barley? The shliach. So how is it that the Balamois is kind? You tell me that what? That it goes up in profit, there's no shini here, it goes to the Balamois. Who made it the Balamois? So in Machel Marav Yehuda, the idea of Balchitin, she eat the Chitin, the Balamois. We never. What do you mean belongs to the Balamois? How did it become the Balamois? The seller never knew about the Balamois. So the obvious question, right? Is Maskil of Shmuel Basasati and the people like this. I don't understand your question. And let's say it was wheat. He ordered to buy wheat and he bought wheat. How did it become the Balamois? The seller doesn't know anything about the Balamois. He thinks the guy standing in front of him is the one who's buying it. Even that case, it shouldn't go to the Balamois. What asks back? If he gave instruction to buy wheat and he went and bought wheat, then he's like the Balamois is standing here. But if you learn that what do you call it? But if he changed the instructions, he's no longer the shliach. If he's no longer the shliach, then how did it become Balamois? It must be the vendor wanted that she become the Balamois. How did the vendor know to become Balamois? It's like, what's the Gemara's question? So Gemara understand. Obviously, Gemara has a different understanding of what shlichus is. The shlichus is not the pshat is that he's standing right in front of her. The shlichus is something. First, it comes to the shlich, and then it sort of moves on to the shalech or something. You have to understand exactly how it works. What Gemara's how many it was. The Gemara balabai is the chi balabai is dummy. As if the balabai is standing right here. Hey, I'll prove it to you. Did not be learned. If a guy, let's say, decided to consecrate all of his assets, or he decided to give his value to the Beis Hamikdash, and the Torah gives the value of every man, woman, age, and so on and so forth, gender and age. Then he has to pay. He doesn't really have money. They seize his assets. They now take his wife's assets. Not to clothe his wife, not to clothe his children, and not if he died something in their sake. Even new shoes that they never wore yet. So they bought it for them.
The first episode recorded of Jews putting everything in the wife's name.
That's Gemara's discussion. Is that what happened there? Now the question is, why can't he take the wife's? Why can't he take the wife? It must be when he bought them, it's as if it became the wife's. But the vendor knew that the wife is here. Did he know that the dye itself is being bought for his wife? Okay, some of the clothes that you can tell it's not for himself, it's women's clothes. But the dye is dye. How does he know from the wife? Who made it the wife that the Hegesh can only take it? Must be as if the wife is standing right here and bought it. The wife is here and the Balabos bought it. Rabba says, Rabba, no raya. That's your whole raya, that because he's a shaliach, it's as if the mishalech is standing right here, and the vendor is as if, even though the vendor doesn't know, it's as if he's selling it directly to the mishalech. No, that's not the reason. Maybe the reason why he didn't become Hegesh, you know why? Because when the person made it Hegesh, he did it on his own. He never intended to give it because of Shalom Bayis. He never wanted to take his wife's clothes. She would know that he's giving her clothes or her jewelry as security for his tzedakah. She'd be very upset. So the Chatzchila, he didn't have that in mind. Not because it really belongs to him. Maybe Taki doesn't belong to her. Maybe Taco belongs to him because the vendor never sold it to them, sold it to him. But why don't they become Hegdish? Because that's not what he had in mind. So you might have, he never had that in mind. Abzayda asked a question, what do you think he has in mind? When a person gives Hegesh, everything, there's a lien on everything. Because the Chidaita Shalad Matfilah, the person want to give his tefillin away to Hegesh. But now yet we learned the sees not only his whatever ordinary, we take his tefillin as well. And if he wants to wear tefillin, he has to buy it back, redeem it back, borrow money and get your tefillin back. Now, there's no way in the world he offered the tefillin to Hegesh. He's a raya, and yet the wife's clothes don't become Hegesh. Must be because it belongs to the wife, not to him. No raya at all. Maybe Taka belongs to him, and a person does not want to give up his wife's clothes to Hegesh. I tefillin he does want to give up. I'm about ain't daita shel in. Yes, daita shel adam al tefillin. A person does have in mind that it's tefillin are holy. Why? Because a makdish nechasav saber. He thinks mitzvah kavin. What am I doing now? I'm doing a mitzvah, and because I'm doing a mitzvah, noch beser. I have to give my holy things, my tefillin and everything else. That's what he thinks. But really, he also owns all his wife's things. No that it's shalech there. But Shalom Bayis, he doesn't want to start any fights over here. Interesting. A person thinks so. This is really called Hegesh B'tos. You thought that the tefillin is a mitzvah, therefore I should give it to the base. What exactly was your thought? I mean, try to think of thought process. You need to put on tefillin every day. So what was your thought process? That you should give it to the base and do what? And how are you going to put on tefillin tomorrow?
What? Is also very, very well thought through.
Yeah, but these.
What are we going to eat tomorrow?
Okay, but maybe kol chassid means doesn't go apply food and all that. Maybe, or you thought you had the money.
We said that it means everything he owns, including even.
No, but then we have more erchin. We'll learn that if you have no money, they go. They see certain things they leave you behind. Your tools or trade they leave behind. A bed. We'll see in the Gemara erchin. That's the laws of bankruptcy. That we leave certain things behind. Well. So Aboisha asked Abai, but talking about Chayav Erkin, and we know but not Chayav Erkin and Mashkinois, we go against, we seize whatever we want. We're not talking about a voluntary thing that you're offering to him. We seize whatever you want. So who cares what you had in mind? So why aren't you taking the wife's clothes? It must be because it belongs to the wife, because the Mishalech is here. You think he voluntarily thinks, hey, good idea. Take me as a mashkin. Now, I'll give you another reason why no raya from here. Why Taka can't give his wife's clothes? Not because he didn't have it in mind, but because as soon and lav dafka because Mishalech is standing here, like the people that just all thought that the Mishalech is not here. That when a person is makdish in the chasav, a second before he's makdish in the chasav, he says, you know what? I'm going to give this to my wife from the beginning. I'm going to give this from the beginning. And the reason, as Mordechai says later, because of Shalom Bayis, I don't want them to be involved in what I'm doing over here. I don't want them to be involved. So the Gemara, so we learned okay, that ended so here because we don't want any problem of Shalom Bayis with this. So therefore we say that not because of Mishalech, no Raif made them because she's a Mishalech and as if she's on the border. No, he got it. And therefore, that's why and so they had a question of Yechon, who the argues of Yechon. Yechon holds the Mashalech is standing there, it's as if the Balamois is standing there, and he put, if you carried out a Shlichus, as if the Balamois is there. You didn't, you altered it. The Shlichus, isn't the Balamois is not really standing there. Okay. But in the case of the Marova, they hold that no, that the Balamois is not standing there, and that's why they asked to make fun of Rabbi Yechon. They don't believe in that. The Balamois is not standing there, and therefore how did it become Balamois? But what they do say is that that the case of the wife, the reason why he's not Hegdish is because right before you made Hegdish, before you take care of your affairs, right? You put things in her name, you make sure that, before you take a risky business venture, you make sure you protect your house, you protect your things, and you put it all in her name, or the kid's name. That's what I learned. Cryptic Bryce. Somebody buys a field in the name of his friend. Somebody buys a field in the name of his friend. We don't force the friend to sell it. What's going on? We'll see in a minute. He said, I'm buying it on the condition that he sells it to me. Then we force him to sell. What's going on here? My compass. We have a Sheshes version and a Bayes version. First up, Sheshes. You buy a field, but you're scared that people will come tomorrow and start, especially strong-arm people, use strong-arm tactics. Hey, the field you have no right to buy. The guys are going to give us the field. So you want to protect himself. So you decide to invoke some high, powerful names. What he said was, let's write a star that the person who bought the field is actually the Reish Galusa, the most powerful person in Bava. Nobody's going to start up with me if they think that the field belongs to the Reish Galusa. The only problem is that the star says Reish Galusa. No, it says his name on it. How in the world are you going to prove? What if the Gusa dies tomorrow? His children say, hey, give us back our father's field. They need some kind of protection. So then afterwards, he goes quietly. The Gusa says, look, give me a letter of understanding, some other star that, the field is mine. But that's the two parts of the Braisa. If he made it conditional or if he just asked. So go as follows. He says, tell everybody this is bought by the Reish Galusa. That's what you write on the star. Write that on the star. So nobody will bother him. Ain't koifen oises gusa limker. Then you go to Shgusa to me, try to coax him. Hey, write me a star. You can't force the Gusa to write your star. He doesn't want to. But if he told the vendor, I'm buying it, put a name as Gusa, but on the condition that Gusa writes me a star. Mechira, koifen as Gusa limker. Be forced the Gusa to sell. Okay. So we just learned, I guess it goes ain't koifen oises gusa limker McLeod and Mekanya Konyule. Sounds from here that the Reish Galusa tak is coin of the star and the field, and could you put a name on it? And you're trying to get him to give you a star. Lema pliga, let's say the name of it. Right now we thought that the vendor doesn't know this whole ruse, and the vendor thinks that that's who's buying it. The Reish Galusa. Pliga be Rava dam le bechine deal about chit the chit no balabayis. What do you call it? He told the guy, so this is my ruse. I'm doing it to protect myself. And he told the witnesses, I want you to put the name of the Galusa on there. So first we thought that he just had a mind that Reish Galusa. Not that he told the vendor anything else. He had a regular start, and because he had in mind, it became the Reish Galusa. So we're saying here, but the vendor only knows this guy here. What's the shaila here? What's going on here? And as if the Reish Galusa was kainit. Why is Reish Galusa kainit? So we say no. The vendor knew Reish Galusa was involved. He put the name of Galusa, and he told the Eidim as well. So therefore, the Reish Galusa now is the owner of the field, and you can't force him. Say for Amanas Kaif and Reish Galusa for yourself. Amai the lame of Reish Galusa say, what do you want from me? That I didn't ask you to put me in the star, right? You're using my name to scare people away. And now it's a passage that it's a passage for me to sell property. First of all, when you sell property, we're having a few times people start talking rumors about guys in trouble. It's more than that. You start getting a bad name. You sell property because you need the money. I don't need that. What do I need the whole? What are we getting involved in your name here? Abai is very similarly, but it's not the Reish Galusa that we're talking about forcing this. It's the vendor. You buy the field, and the name of Reish Galusa and Kaifin is Limka we don't force the vendor to write another star to the buyer that to write a second star and say, really, the field belongs to the buyer. We're talking now to the vendor, not to the Reish Glusa. How does the Reish Glusa involved? So now the buyer will have two stars. One star, if somebody comes to claim the land is not yours, he'll show the star Reish Glusa. This is blind Reish Glusa, they'll walk away. But in reality, if he wants to sell the property, he has, or the Reish Glusa's kids come along, he'll show them the real star. That's what he can't force the vendors to do that. Why? Because the vendor will say, you know what kind of name I'll have as if I sold a double, I sold property twice. Once the Jews with you. Terrible. But especially years later, people don't remember. The Amanas, but he said, look, I'm going to buy the field from you on the condition. You write me a second star. For me personally, you force the moicha to sell. You force him to sell. You just like quickly, because you don't force him to sell a second time. Why would you? The way we learned right now, shot that he wrote the start to the name of the Jerusalem. We don't force the Meicher to write a second start to him. Shit, of course not. Well, how can you force him to write a second start? Made the yodit. You knew that no enough shows you kill. You knew that I'm buying it really for me, even though the name on the star it says the Jerusalem is buying it. It's only a ruse that I put over here in place to protect myself. Nobody throws money away for nothing, and you knew my plan, and you took my money, which means you knew that ultimately the property is mine. So write me a proper star. You could argue it's as if we spoke about it, even though I didn't, but it's quite obvious you knew what I wanted to my intention. Write me another star. I cannot force the vendor. And why not? I sold your property with a name that you told me, which is the what do you call the name of the Reish Glusa, and let him write you another star, not me. I don't have to because it's bad for my reputation to have two starters on one property. Yeah. But if you said a condition, then Koifer is a Moichel Limker. If you said to Moichel, look, I'm selling you, I want you to start to I want you to write another one for me on the condition, and that's the only condition for the sale, then the Moichel has to write a second start. Isn't that pshit as well? Obviously, he made a condition. He tells the witness that this is what I'm doing, there's going to be another star here. So Mao the Tamer, the vendor in this case, can say, I thought that since you said, why are you telling the witnesses the same story? You told me. Then you tell the witness the same thing. I would have thought that the reason why I told the witnesses is because you want to go to the venture to the Galusa and tell the Galusa, look, it really wasn't yours. It was my thing. Write me a start to sell to me. I thought once you're involving the Adim, I thought you don't need me anymore. And what's your plan? You're going to go to Ishgalusa and get him to write another start to sell you the property that's his. No. The reason why I told the agent is not because I want them to go to the Ishgalusa to get him to write me a start to sell me back the property. I want them to know what my deal with you. So in case whatever you deny, whatever it is, it's clear that even though the Ishgalusa's name is on the contract, it's really my property, and that was purely a means of protection. So we'll stop here.